The Issue of African American Rights During the Reconstruction Era by Sabrina Fowler. The period of Reconstruction was a period during which time America had to come to terms with the results of the Civil War. The country had to adapt to life without the institution of slavery, readmit the states that seceded, and undergo political, social, and economic growth. The biggest issue facing this period was that of African American rights, because it was not an issue that could be solved just socially or politically, but rather both. It would not only have to politically assign the rights to African Americans, but socially alter the way African Americans were viewed by the population. President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st of 1863, as the nation approached its third year of the Civil War. The proclamation declared that all persons held as slaves within the rebellious states are and henceforward shall be free. Despite this expansive wording, the Emancipation Proclamation was limited in many ways. It applied only to states that had seceded from the Union, leaving slavery untouched in the loyal border states. It also expressly exempted parts of the Confederacy that had already come under Northern control. Most importantly, the freedom it promised depended on Union military victory. The issuing of the Emancipation Proclamation changed the atmosphere of the war and was a key part in the victory by the Union Army. After the Civil War wrapped up, the era of Reconstruction began, which entailed rebuilding the South and its economy, coming to terms with the results of the war and abolition of slavery, readmitting the states to the Union, and most importantly, addressing the issue of African American rights. During the 1864 election, Lincoln was re-elected, mainly due to the fact that the Southern states' votes did not count due to their secession. Formally abolishing slavery in the United States, the 13th Amendment was passed by Congress on January 31st of 1865 and ratified by the states on December 6, 1865. This ratification of this amendment became a requirement in Lincoln's Proclamation of Amnesty and Reconstruction, or the 10% Plan, involving the re-entering of the seceded states into the Union. Other requirements included rewriting the states' constitutions and 10% of the voters swearing allegiance to the Union, making it fairly easy for the states to re-enter the Union. During Lincoln's presidency, there was the Freedmen's Bureau, which acted as an early form of social welfare program, aiding in the assimilation of the freedmen into American society. It did so by providing shelter and job skills for many, as well as educating 200,000 freedmen. On April 14, 1865, Lincoln was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth, which would prove to take a toll on any pending courses of action to allot more rights to African Americans due to Lincoln's choice in vice president. Andrew Johnson was a Democrat, Southern sympathizer, and white supremacist, a lethal combo for African Americans in the United States. He spoke of disenfranchising former Confederates and office holders, as well as Southerners, with $200,000 in taxable property, but used his presidential pardon generously to allow these people to get off scot-free. He also used his veto to reject any civil rights acts, as well as any legislation to support the Freedmen's Bureau. The Black Codes were a great step backwards in the cause for African American rights. They were Southern laws that restricted African Americans' rights to own property, as well as established forced labor contracts under the supervision of white men. For the first time, they were working for wages, but they were low and oftentimes deferred. These Black Codes fundamentally recreated an atmosphere of slavery in the South. The election of 1866 became a blessing for the African Americans because it resulted in the Republicans controlling 2/3 of the House, allowing them to override Johnson's vetoes and essentially handed control of Reconstruction over to the Republicans. The results of this midterm election led to the Civil Rights Act of 1866, which gave citizenship to all. The flaw in this act was that it was only a law and could be overturned. Therefore, it became the 14th Amendment, which finally defined citizenship in America, granting it to all persons born or naturalized in the United States. In addition to this, it denied states the power to forbid anyone from life, liberty, or property without due process of law, as well as forbidding them to deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. This amendment was one of the first to limit states' rights, as opposed to limiting the rights of Congress. Under the presidency of Ulysses S. Grant, the 15th Amendment was ratified in 1870, granting universal male suffrage to those above 21, regardless of race. The Civil Rights Acts continued to be passed, such as that of 1875, which granted African Americans equality in public accommodations and gave them the ability to serve in juries. With all this legislation being passed, granting African Americans freedom, citizenship, and suffrage, one might think that all was well for African Americans, but all this did not come without an abundance of opposition. The most famous of this opposition would probably be the Ku Klux Klan, which was a white supremacist group originating in Pulaski, Tennessee. They terrorized blacks through beatings, whippings, burnings of homes, and lynchings, during which attacks they wore masks, white cardboard hats, and white sheets. A lot of KKK propaganda circulated as well. Their goal was to scare off African American voters and end the Republican rule. They wished to redeem the Old South. Other similar groups include the White Brotherhood, the Men of Justice, the Constitutional Union Guards, and the Knights of the White Camellia. With the Compromise of 1877 establishing Hayes as president while pulling the military presence from the South, thus ending the era of Reconstruction, progress was certainly made politically for the case of African American rights. During Reconstruction, some 2,000 African Americans held public office, from the local level all the way up to the U.S. Senate. However, it was evident that there was still a long way before, socially, they would be deemed as equals. Going into the period of Reconstruction, the intention to address the issue of African American rights was present. However, following through with these intentions became harder with the assassination of the Republican president that was replaced by a Democrat. Hope for following through was reignited during the midterm election when Republicans regained control of Reconstruction. However, once political progress had been made, social opposition began and continued to hold any true progress back. Even though African Americans gained freedom, citizenship, and suffrage, the country had yet to alter how they see African Americans. Regardless of the fact that they had the same rights whites had, some still were unable to see them as equals to themselves. During the era of Reconstruction, much of the political progress in African American rights lost significance due to social opposition. This can be seen in segregated public commodities, which would remain that way for a century after the Civil Rights Act of 1875. The Reconstruction era really showed a concept that all men were created equal and should be treated as such, and a concept as revolutionary as this could not be fully established by any means in such a short period of time. But one can say with assurance that the civil rights movement planted its roots during the period of Reconstruction.
When I get older, I will be stronger. They'll call me freedom, just like a waving flag.